Welcome to Permission to Kick Ass, the show that gives you a virtual seat at the bar for the real conversations that happen between entrepreneurs. I'm interviewing all kinds of business owners, from those just a few years into freelancing to CEOs helming 9-figure companies. If you've ever worried that everyone else just seems to get it and you're missing something or messing things up, this show is for you. I'm your host, Angie Coley, and let's get to it. Hey, and welcome back to Permission to Kick Ass. I am so excited today, y'all, because I get to welcome back to the show all the way from the very first episode, the ones I call my planes, trains, and automobiles episode, because that was the one where everything went wrong. I'm so happy to have Rachel Mazza back for it's not a do-over, it's an encore. I love that.
A sequel, if you will.
A sequel, even better than the first one. So tell us a little bit about your business.
Yeah. So I guess the corny marketing version is I help visionaries bring their ideas to life.
Yes.
But the down and dirty version is I help people build and scale offers and online businesses. So
I love that.
My roots are in copywriting like you, Angie, and like you as well. I've learned a lot of skills along the way that lets me take that to a higher level.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I've been talking to more and more people lately who are, multi-talented or multi-passionate. Nice little buzzword out there in the industry too. But how, I'm going to throw a curveball at you. How did you find yourself and your strengths in an operational context and switch to this?
Well, to be completely transparent, that's how I deal with anxiety is just hyper organization. So it's a survival mechanism. I just write lists and then write lists about the lists. And that's how I get things out of my head because I always have a million things flying around my head. And like we talked about, I'm a quick start and I'm always starting things. And so I can't hold it all in there or I'll go crazy. So I write things down and I create systems for myself so that I'm free to let go. And I've just been pretty good at learning how to listen to other people and what they're doing, what they're holding in their head, and help them figure out systems that helps them let go as well.
That's so interesting to me. And of course, first of all, I felt lists of lists in my soul because that's something that I have to do too.
This list is too big. Let's rewrite it.
Oh yeah. Break it down into smaller lists with the lists of all the lists. We can definitely get super meta on that one. And it's been an interesting endeavor with my own business partner because there are times just by nature of what we're building that we can't move nearly as fast as I want to. And I've had to learn how to channel anxiety in other ways, which leads to creating interesting systems and entirely new offers for side businesses. And yeah, I totally feel you on. I have to act. Otherwise I just sit there and
yeah. And it's interesting when you add other people in the mix too, because so that I've been going through this journey learning the EOS system, the entrepreneurial operating system, and helping my clients implement that in their business so they can step out of the business more. And one thing I learned that's really, really stuck with me is anytime you add one more person, it adds 7 layers of complexity.
Oh, wow.
And it's so true. It's because it's if you got 3 people on the team, you add one more person, it's not a 4th layer of complexity. It's this person to the first person, to the second person. And then there's a level down and they have to connect. It just adds so much more complexity every time you add one more person in the mix. And so sometimes your systems don't work when you now have to have other people who are supposed to be reading your mind, or you have to figure out new communication methods, right?
Oh, yeah. That's fascinating to me. The 7X jumped out to me in particular. And my first reaction was, wait, what? I don't understand that. And then I remember the first time that I tried to bring a VA into my new partnership, and that did not work because the VA and I work really well together. My business with Permission to Kick Ass is highly systematized. We were just talking about this before we started recording, that so many people comment on the whole booking and onboarding process, getting you ready to record. That was all done by design. When building a new business, you don't have anything set in that way. And it's kind of jump in and figure it out as you go. And that's a lot harder to bring somebody into when you're trying to organize things. So I found that out the hard way and didn't even realize it until you said it.
Yeah. Add some complexity there.
Oh, yeah. Adds a little bit of complexity. But I thought what was fascinating, we were talking a little bit before recording about how many different businesses you've been in and this recurring theme of burnout. So I'm just going to throw us into the deep end. Let's talk about this and let's talk about burnout.
Yeah, I feel like we've been talking about this for a long time, you and I, because we're very similar that we just go all in with things and we don't know how to not give.
Yeah.
Right. And so we both care a lot about what we're doing. We have a very high pride of performance. We really care about the work that we deliver and the people that we work with. And that over time, I've had to learn how to say no more times than I say yes, because I've learned that I cannot give 110% of myself in whatever I'm doing. I wish I could half-ass things. It's just not possible. That would make things a lot simpler if I could just not do things all the way. But in that, it's really hard to remember to make space for yourself, as well as remind yourself that energy isn't always an infinite resource. A lot of times it is like you go to bed, you wake up, you got a new lease on life. But like sometimes creative energy, especially, my friend Laura Gale always says that sometimes if you push too hard today, you're borrowing from tomorrow. And I find that is especially true with creative energy. And we've all experienced it where we had a kick-ass day and everything seems to be going right. And we're just crushing it and killing it and getting everything on our to-do list done. And the next day it's like we can't even like sit down and open a tab for more than 5 seconds without jumping all over. And it's like you depleted those stores and didn't give yourself enough time to come back and refresh and things like that. So it's the same way with client projects or going all in with work. You got to make sure that you leave space for yourself. Otherwise you get burned out.
I love that. That actually happened to me this week as we're recording. So we're recording at the beginning of March. This isn't going to air for a couple months. But on Monday, I had a super productive day building a new offer that I'm going to be having at the end of the month. And I was so excited. I did so much work that I had one of those days that I forgot how much work I did. And I thought I did nothing because, and so I sat down and I talked to my best friend and I was like, no, I built a Thrivecart funnel and an upsell funnel and an autoresponder and an affiliate doc and an affiliate portal and some affiliate assets. And wow, okay. It usually takes several weeks to build something like this. And I built all of that on Monday. Yesterday, Tuesday, I was definitely at that whole system. Yep. So the podcast copy for this week, have you had a chance to look at that? And I was like, no. And also I am fried, like capital F fried. That's not going to happen today. So I guess we're just going to run the podcast a little bit late this week and it'll be fine.
Well, and not all work is created equal too. Like there's been so many times where like work isn't bad, right? Like work fuels me a lot of times. I love work, but it's certain types of work, right, that drain you and some that energize you. Like I'll sit down for 4 or 5 hours and create something, a new lead magnet, a sales page, build an outline of a new product, whatever it is. And then I'll get up and I'll feel spent, but not depleted, if that makes sense. But if I sit all day and I'm like jumping between tasks and I'm trying to manage people, which I manage a team, and that's like sometimes the most exhausting because you always have to have the answers, and all the answers are hard to find because no one would have come to you if they could have figured it out themselves. You know what I mean? So that kind of stuff, answering emails, like I find that very, very draining. And that's the stuff that burns me out. Creating is hard work, but it doesn't burn me out. It's the nitty gritty stuff. But for other people, it's the opposite. They're like, man, if I could just mindlessly sit here and just answer emails, I feel like that would be a break for me. And where the creative stuff sometimes is really taxing for other people.
Yeah, I totally get that. I think that was the mind blower for me that once upon a time, I had somebody accuse me of sorcery. Of course, she was joking. She watched me edit an email that she had agonized over for 2 weeks. And I changed like 2 sentences and she was like, what kind of witchcraft is this? I just don't understand how you can do it that easily. And I was like, I don't understand how you can operate with this like spreadsheet wizardry and managing multiple calendars. And that's like spreadsheets. No, makes me kind of barfy. But if you want to handle spreadsheets, by all means, go ahead. We can trade skills that way.
Yeah, that's funny. You have to tap into different energies too. And it's hard to switch between them sometimes. Like I used to have a copywriting agency and I had a team of writers, and the process was I would go sell and close clients. I would do research and outline the article, and then sitting down and writing the article was another thing. And then editing the article was another thing. And I never did those on the same days because I would like say like, okay, this is for outline, Rachel. This is for editing, Rachel. And it just was so draining to try and switch my mind between those different types of tasks that take different types of energy. So I think making sure you batch activities is important too. Otherwise it's just, you get exhausted just from trying to change how you're thinking.
Yes. Glad that you mentioned that because I think I carried in my head a little bit too long than was helpful. This idea of like creatives need freedom. I don't need to schedule or time block my days because I need to be open to whatever the universe brings me and opportunities and blah, 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 blah. First of all, guys, the opportunities are still going to come whether you're open for them or not. So might as well fill your schedule and then see what you can open up room for if you find something super interesting.
Yep.
And then, second of all, it was that task switching that I didn't realize was happening and just taking up 3 to 4 times the mental energy because I'm feeling I move over here to take this call, but I stopped in the middle of this thing over here and I got to remember that and get back into that group. And like, it just all adds up and uses extra bandwidth. And so I've been working extra hard in my business with my partnership too, to have themed days. And it's like, these are the days that we do our calls. Wednesdays, I've mentioned before, are my podcast days. Those are the only days of the week that I do recording. And whenever somebody says, do you want to do it on another day? Nope. We'll just have to book a few weeks out. That's fine. But Wednesdays are the podcast recording day because that's the day that, I spend all morning in quiet, getting my energy up. We can have these great calls. And then by the time all of this is done, I am going to be ordering dinner out because I will have spent all of my energy on having great calls.
The freedom thing is important though, because here's the thing. What you don't need is freedom to just let the wind carry you with no responsibilities or structure. But it is important to have free space for your brain, right? But that can be structured. Like I've written some of my best emails, and I used to have a routine when I wasn't living in somewhere that was really cold all the time. I lived in Florida and I could go outside every day. But I would have this routine where I would wake up in the morning and say, I need to write an email this morning. And so I'm going to plant that in the back of my mind and just go for a really long walk. So I wasn't going for a walk thinking need to think of an email, But I go for a walk and I'd look at stuff and I'd get a cup of coffee and I would structure like 2-3 hours just to walk around and let my mind be free. But I'd plant that seed of like, okay, I'd love to pull a story or a lesson out of these 3 hours just from what I'm experiencing through life and thinking about. And so you can create this frame, this structure for your creativity, which allows you to be efficient with that freedom space and still be able to put on a different hat later and go and do what you need to do to run your business or make the monies.
Oh, yeah. I love that. It's funny because I take a bit of a different stance from that. I ask my subconscious for ideas and problem solving right before I'm about to take a power nap. And I am such a huge fan of power naps. Often if I disappear from an event, you can count on the fact that I'm out somewhere taking a nap. But I will right before I lay down go, man, it would be nice if I really had a solution to X problem. I've been wondering about this problem for a while. Now it's time to rest. And I would lay down and, 8-9 times out of 10, when I wake up from that nap, I've had some flash of insight that's like, oh, I know how to solve this problem. Or at least I know how to get one step closer to solving this problem. Good nap. Yeah.
I'm so envious. I cannot nap. I wake up and I am like an angry bridge troll that has gone through a dimensional portal and doesn't know what year it is. And I just feel like I got hit by a bus and I'm like, oh, this is the worst waking up situation ever. So I wish I could nap. I just like go until the end of the day until I like face plant into my bed and like and power through. That's my whole strategy.
I mean, to be fair, that's me in the mornings. And that's why whenever somebody's like, okay, I see all of your availabilities in the afternoon. Could you do in the morning? And I'm like, you don't want to do morning. Not with me. No, you don't. Not before I've had my coffee, unless we're maybe meeting for coffee, but you're still going to see a very different energy from Angie pre-coffee versus post-coffee.
See, that's my freedom time. I'm unavailable.
Exactly. It's like, I just need to be able to sleep in if Stella kept me up half the night, or go for a walk, or run out and get some coffee, or do something and just have that freedom. So I love that, like freedom, but boundaries. And I think that, that's almost paralyzing in terms of creativity when you've got blue sky and every option under the sun, but then you've got to think about every other option under the sun.
That's paralyzing.
You put some boundaries, some guardrails. Okay, either this or that. We got to figure one of them out. Then the pros and cons of those are limited.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, that's the thing is we give kids boundaries because they need boundaries, right? Because their job is to push the boundaries and like see what they can get away with and experiment and test and try new things and break themselves. Our creative minds, our work minds, we also break ourselves, right? And so someone's got to be the adult and put those boundaries in place. Otherwise, we'll be falling out of trees. Metaphorically in our brains.
Falling out of trees metaphorically in our brains. I love that.
Take that one and put it in your pocket for later.
For sure. I think that's a great little nugget. And it ties perfectly to what we were talking about before recording, which was like going through burnout and sometimes how it turns into a cycle. I know I've been there myself. There was this story that I've told a few times that people just kind of, they turn into a deer in the headlights when I tell them. But I really wanted this catalog when I was in house. And it was one of those feather in the cap projects. 85th anniversary. We were going all out for the production of this thing, custom photography, layout, all the works. Of like behind the scenes documentary of the production even. I had to ignore a drone that kept flying into the photography studio and I could not do it. I just could not do it.
Distractions abound.
Oh yeah. Those things buzz so loud. And the director kept saying, no, we're going to fly it in overhead so we get the aerial view of you guys like head down over the laptop working on the catalog. It's going to be great. Could not stop myself from looking at that drone. Probably because I was tired, because back then I was pulling anywhere from 15 to 20 hour days. I was literally going into the office at like 5 o'clock in the morning and leaving at midnight and getting a couple hours of sleep and coming back and doing it all again for months.
And that was celebrated, I'm sure. And so it just made it worse, right?
Yes. Like, look at how hard she worked. We pulled that off on a skeleton crew, one writer, one designer, one photographer, and one production person who did all of the technical layout stuff. Like, if anybody's ever worked on a project like that, it was 112 pages. That is not easy. We were given 4 months and 4 people to do it. We pulled off a miracle, but at the expense, like to the point that this doesn't happen in corporate offices very often, but my boss calls me aside and he goes, I need you to take some comp days because I can just tell that you're not here. And that's fine. That's not a judgment. So like, go be not here, not here.
Not here. Yeah. My business partner, Kevin Rogers, told me that one time. I like really needed a break and I was like pushing. And we finally scheduled some time for me to take off. And he's like, went to the whole crew and he's like, Rachel is a ghost. Do not talk to Rachel. Do not think about Rachel. Rachel, go away. Do not think about copy chief. Go just be not here, please.
You know, we need more people like that in the world because rest is important. Recharging the creative well is important. And burnout is a thing that can happen to anyone at any time. I was working on a project this week for the Best of the podcast. And there was one guest, Jude Charles, who said something incredibly brilliant. He didn't think that he could be experiencing burnout because he was doing the best work of his life with the best clients and making the most money he had ever made in his life, during a time right at the start of the pandemic when everybody else was struggling. And he was like, I can't possibly be burnt out. No, I really am. And it doesn't always look like rock bottom, running out of everything, suffering. But yeah.
Well, and the thing is, I used to think of rest as a luxury or a privilege that had to be earned. And over the years, I've learned that rest is part of the work. Just like an athlete or someone going to the gym, recovery, anyone who's serious about their fitness will know that rest and recovery is part of the program. You can't have gains and you can't get stronger or get to your goals unless you build in the recovery, because your body just gives up, right? Your body needs that time. That's when the real work is done. That's when the muscle fibers are being rebuilt into what you want them to be, right? And it's the same thing. Just because you can't see your energy muscle or your brain muscle or your creativity muscle, it's the exact same thing. It's just hard. It's just easier to ignore because it's not physical. You don't physically feel it.
Yeah. And it's funny because that ties into this concept of willpower and why so many people beat themselves up for not having the willpower or the discipline to get something done. But it's exactly like you said, that's a muscle. It can be developed over time. And also there's a limit to it. So if you're constantly making choices and decisions and not coming up with systems like, hey, Rachel's good at that, hint, 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 listen to the end where she will give you her contact information. But systematizing things, getting rest, all of this is essential to the process. And it reminded me of this story once where I went on a hike on Mount Diablo, which should give you a hint.
Sounds intimidating.
To the level of that hike. And I experienced something that a lot of hikers have heard of called bonking. Very hardcore. I ran out of water about a mile before the summit and I hadn't brought anything to snack on. And so I remember seeing the summit. It's probably less than quarter a mile away and just barely being able to pick up one foot and put it in front of the other. And I finally got to the top, sat down, had some water, had a sandwich, and within 10 minutes, all of that energy had returned to me. But before, it just felt like agony and a slog, and I am never going to get up the side of this mountain. It's just not going to happen.
Yep. And like, that's a good example because there's times to push and there's time to say like, this could be irreparable damage if I go there. Like, how important is this to me? And what am I willing to sacrifice to get there is not always, the answer is not always persevere, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like, save yourself for what truly matters and choose which literally what hill are you going to die on, right?
Yeah.
So choose where you're going to push and where you're going to conserve, because like you said, you have to restore that energy. And sometimes it takes a long time.
And that's funny. There's a leader in our industry that we both know, John Carlton, who talks about burnout and how so many of us approach it from this perspective of, it's fine because after I hit the wall, I'll be able to rest. Like, I just need to put, exactly like you said, I just need to push through right now. And once I get there, I'll be able to rest. But one, what if you're not able to rest? What if you're horrible at scheduling and you put something right after this? Two, what if you hit the wall at speed? I'm just leaving that hanging out there on purpose. What if you hit the wall at speed? Because that's called a crash, my friend. And a lot of people don't survive those.
Well, that's what, when you said like, when I hit the wall, rest, I thought there's no speed where running into a wall doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
You should stop before you get to the wall. That will not hurt.
The wall is not a finish line. The finish line is the finish line. A wall is a wall and they hurt.
Yeah. One time I have a mastermind group that I have with a couple of girlfriends of mine who are all entrepreneurs and very talented. And we're all very, very different. Like, one of them has a business, which she only takes on like 4 clients a year. And she loves just having that like very, like predictable and slow moving, peaceful business, where myself, I'm like hustle, hustle, hustle all the time. Yeah. And then I've got like this other woman who just works with like 1 or 2 main clients. And that's like her steady. We're all very different in the ways that we approach work and rest and productivity and things like that. And I'm always like going for the gold, right? Like going for the next big thing, grow, grow, grow all the time, which I'm learning to regulate better. But I remember one time my girlfriend said to me, she's like, it seems like you're not enjoying the process of getting there. And that was like a big wake up for me, that I always had these goals and I was always going for the wall, right? The goals. And I just completely discounted the entire journey and process of getting there as waste product, essentially. And I've done this my whole life. Like, I remember being in college, and I don't regret it, but I acknowledge that I really didn't have the traditional college experience because I wasn't there enjoying it. I was always trying to graduate as fast as possible so I could get out and start my own business, which I'm glad I did. And that's what I wanted to do. And I just felt like college was a thing I had to do. But there were so many experiences that I really could have taken with me and friends I could have made that I missed out on because I wasn't enjoying the process of getting there as well. And I think business is the same. Like, you got to enjoy the process. That's where that's life. You're never going to get there. You're never going to get there because it's always a new thing, right? So enjoy the whole process of doing what you're doing right now.
Oh, that's funny, because I feel like I just gave somebody similar advice the other day that was like, it was something along the lines of the greatest disservice that the marketing industry, which you and I are both part of, has ever done is promise that if you just try this solution, that's going to solve everything. Just this one thing and you're going to be done. And I've used this analysis. Yeah, we're going to be done. $9.97 for one time only. My brain immediately went to all of those old Guthy Rinker commercials and was like trying to add in more. I'm going to stop it there. But, you know, the funny thing about that is, I've used this analogy before. If you fall on your face, if you trip and fall, do you just lay there and wait for death to take you?
Depends on the day.
That's not really the way that works, though.
No, yeah, exactly.
But often we treat life kind of like that if it's just this one solution, everything stops here and I can just coast on into happy lands. From here on out, everything will be fine. I don't ever have to work again to put in an effort. I will solve all my problems with just this one action. And then you take the action and go, damn it, my problems aren't all solved.
Yep.
Because it's not the finish line.
Exactly. And sometimes, like you said, when I love the idea of your power nap is where you plant that seed and say, it'd be really nice if I woke up with a solution to this. You can do that as you're going through the process too, right? Like sometimes you find the best solutions by doing something else, like working on something else, right? Or just going through and doing your work is like, you got to distract your brain sometimes for it to do its best thinking.
Absolutely. And that can be, it ties back to what you said earlier perfectly, like that's part of the work and it contributes to the work being that much better. I know with some of the writing teams that I used to run, I used to jokingly tell them, do you know how I can tell that you gave this like zero space? Like no break whatsoever. Because the first half is polished within an inch of its life and the last half is rushed and sloppy. And so I can tell that you like stayed up all night to get this in by deadline, which by the way, appreciate you for that. Hey, thank you so much for meeting the deadline and going to such efforts. Next time, why don't we try it this way? Because I think that you'll spend a lot less time agonizing over this and beating yourself up and feeling guilty for almost blowing a deadline. And you'll also turn in a really great draft because you've given yourself time and space.
Yeah, we've all seen those Hollywood movies where it's like a really good movie and you're really enjoying it. And the last like half an hour, you're like, I feel like they just gave up at the end. And you're like, what was that? Like, it was a great movie. Like, why'd they just give up at the end?
Game of Thrones.
Oh man, don't even get me started. Don't even get me started, Angie.
It was so great until season 8. Oh man. But well, let's circle back to, because I know that you've been through burnout a couple of times and I've been through burnout a couple of times. Why don't we dig into that a little bit deeper and talk about how you pulled yourself out of it and what you learned?
Yeah, I think it's an ongoing process. When you go through burnout, what we really all need is like a 6 to 8 month sabbatical, right? But
yes,
sometimes you're very fortunate if you have the freedom to just like not do anything for 8 months. But I don't have that. I haven't built that for myself yet. Most of my life still needs some maintenance. But I think that it's learning to live with yourself and the way that you work in a way that just facilitates ongoing healing and recovery, right? So you get burned out. Sometimes you reach a point of no return where you're like, I give up on life. And then I don't know, you like I've literally thought about like, what if I just went and got like a bartending job? And it would just be, I wouldn't make like tons of money, but it would be, I'd just have fun talking to people. And then I decided I don't want to stay up past 9 p.m. and that dream goes out the window. But like I've thought about like, what if you just go get like a minimum wage job where you can just go there and like not think about anything and just have it be really easy and not take it home with you. That's the point where you're like, okay, maybe I'm burned out and there's no recovery, right? But usually what happens is you get burned out and you have to keep going because you can't just stop your life. And so you need to learn to work in recovery and rest and healing time and space as you're still going about and running your business or working with clients and things like that. And for me, that looked like not trying to make every day a knock it out of the park, accomplished everything on my to-do list day. It was choosing one thing, sometimes two, but usually one thing. And it's like, if I get this done today, it's a win. And if I decide that I'm starting to really feel it and I'm pushing too hard and like sitting in the idea of opening an email, like makes me want to cry. Okay, we're done today. That's it. Right. Yeah. So sometimes you have more energy and productivity than others. And some days your mind is telling you like, it's a rest day. So just pick one thing every day. And that's what it looks like for me, as well as accepting that good opportunities were going to pass. I was going to allow them to pass. And then it wasn't a finite thing. Saying no to something or not right now doesn't mean that no more opportunities are going to come. It means that I would be doing myself and this opportunity a disservice by accepting it when I don't have the energy to give it my all. And so I think those were the two things for me that really made a difference and allows me to come back from burnout without completely putting my life and my career on hold.
I love that you framed it that way, because often I think that we put this pressure on ourselves to say yes to an opportunity, especially if it feels like a life changer or a career maker or like that huge opportunity that we've just been waiting for. But if the timing is all wrong and your energy is not there, are you showing up and giving your best to this opportunity? If you're not, like, that actually brought up a story once where I interviewed someone for a really high level marketing team. It's like the Tony Robbins of business building and online marketing. And I was hiring for this team and somebody showed up and they showed up late to the interview, first of all. And I was like, all right, red flag, but not immediately disqualifying. Sometimes things happen, but you can tell when the energy is all off, right? I was interviewing someone and they were kind of sitting there with their face on their hands and they were like, I'm sorry. I just didn't really sleep well last night. And they didn't really show up and give me their best effort. They weren't really answering the questions. And so afterward, that was one of the few people that I felt really compelled to reach out to and say, hey, with all the love I have, that was not your best effort. And I think you know it and I know it too. And in instances like this, it's okay to reach out and at least request, hey, could we do this another time? I don't feel like I can bring my best today. Or you don't even have to go into that level of detail. Could we reschedule this? I don't think I can do today.
Yep.
Totally fine. But if you're going to show up for those opportunities, like the point of that little side story is bring your best.
Yep.
Don't show up and half-ass that, you know?
And you learn those moments too over your career and by making mistakes and just watching people who are really great at it. There are times to put on your game face when you're not feeling it and show up and perform, just like someone who's not feeling great would step on a stage and give their best performance. And there are times to say, look, I know that this is flexible. This is important to me, but I need some more space to make sure that I'm giving you the attention and time and effort that you deserve. And so I think you just learn that the nuance, and it's unfortunate that there's not like a checklist that you can just, to know which one's which, but sometimes you put on your war paint and you show up no matter what, and you give it your all, whether you're going to collapse after or not. And sometimes you say like, okay, this is important. I respect you, which is why I'm asking if we can reschedule this or push this out a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. You get to say that. I mean, to tie back into the theme of the podcast, permission to ask for more time, permission to reschedule or do things the way that you need to in order to support you showing up and doing your best at things, permission to not always do your best at things. Like our mutual friend, Brian, was my life coach for a long time. And I know that one thing he really excelled at was on those low energy days, which happens to me at least a couple times a month. Whether Stella decides to keep me up half the night or like something happened outside. Yeah. Cats, they have that special noise that's like instant awake. Or she puts her whiskers on my face and it startles me. But that happens where I don't get enough rest. And if I don't get enough rest, then the energy is kind of off for the whole day, even if I do manage to fit in a nap or something like that. So on those low energy days that I know are going to happen, right? I can't prevent them from happening because things are going to happen. But I can control how I react to the low energy days. And so we developed a plan for what am I going to do? Exactly like you said. Yep. When the low energy days happen, what does a win look like on those days? Because those days I cannot actually deliver at my normal production. And that has to be okay, which is going to give me like the faith and the confidence in myself to actually show up on high performance days and knock it out of the park. But yeah. Both.
One guideline that I like to use to help make the decision about whether it's time to push or time to rest is there's this leadership concept about leading above the line versus below the line. So if you think of like you draw a line on a piece of paper, if you are above the line, you can lead and perform from a place of kindness, openness, creativity, transparency. Like it's okay if you're like transparent and feel vulnerable because you don't feel like you're like in danger or anything like that. You have the other partner's best interests in the other party's best interest in mind. And when you're below the line, you're closed, you're insecure, you may be passive aggressive or feeling passive aggressive. You're assuming malintent or assuming that someone's trying to get one over on you or thinking bad things about you. So have like a head check. Am I leading from above the line or am I leading from below the line? Because you can lead people badly and still be effective. Right? They could still have an effective team or effective project, but it's where you're leading from above the line that everyone feels good about it. There's growth and you make the right decisions. And so that's where I'm at. And sometimes it's like, okay, I'm below the line. Can I get myself above the line? If not, it might be time to take a beat. And that's kind of the guideline I use. Like when you recognize that you're below the line and you can like physically feel like the closedness of your mental state, right? If you can open that up, you can get above the line. Cool. If not, maybe just take a beat and you're not doing anyone service by trying to push through that.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm going to take it to briefly a dark place and then we'll come back to happy, laughter, fun time. But there's a reason why so many people who are like torturing another human will deprive them of sleep, will deprive them of food. That's exactly the kind of stuff that gets you below the line, like you were talking about. And you don't have the capacity because that well is not charged. You cannot actually think of it from your best possible self, and give people grace, give yourself grace when you literally are just running out of energy to actually keep living. So this, I mean, like I said, that was kind of dark, and that's not really necessarily what I want you to think about, that you're like torturing yourself here, but you kind of are if you are not building in time to rest, to nourish your body. I'm not saying that you need to go on like a Whole30 vegan, paleo, whatever diet, whatever good food looks like to you, eat the food. Relish it, enjoy it. Rachel and I can tell you about that because we're both foodies. We're trading like restaurant recommendations back and forth, and you're having Abby over to do a gourmet cheese board in your kitchen, and like, so we enjoy the food as nourishment and as joy and recharging the well and socializing and all of that stuff. It's important, and I cannot stress that enough. If you are doing without because you think that the work is more important, it's not. You are important.
And I think it's important you talk about those low energy days, Angie, and I think it's important to recognize that there's different types of rest as well. There's physical rest, but there's also spiritual rest, emotional rest, mental rest, right? And physical rest obviously is a big one, but it's sometimes you're depleted in more ways than I didn't sleep last night, you know? Like sometimes you just like don't have the capacity inside you, you know? So it's important to recognize and think, what kind of rest do I need? Because sometimes going to the gym is a form of rest, right?
Yes.
It's that you made space for yourself and allowed yourself to get in a place where you're taking care of yourself and making those endorphins flow. That is a form of rest sometimes. So what kind of rest do you need is a question to ask yourself.
I love that. That actually happened to me yesterday, to go back to that story where like I kicked ass on Monday. Yesterday was a low energy day. And around 3:30 or so, when I hit the wall and was like, I can't look at anything else. The thoughts aren't coming. Brain is not braining. That's my favorite saying from college. Can't brain today. Have the dumb.
Yep.
Yes. So when I hit that wall yesterday, I went, okay, what do I do? I'm not going to shut this down because then I'm just going to like sleep the rest of the afternoon. I'm going to go to the gym. I don't really have to think about going to the gym aside from are my shoulders back? Am I doing this properly? Everything's tracking. Cool. But I don't have to think deeply like I do with my regular work. And so that's so funny that you bring that up, because I indulged in that kind of rest just yesterday. Rest is not a totality. It's not, you have to rest from everything if you rest from one thing. Like, yes.
Yep. Yeah. Sometimes self-care, it's not always Chardonnay and bubble baths, right? Sometimes it's coffee with a friend. Sometimes it's letting yourself sleep in. Sometimes it's canceling a call and just giving yourself that time to journal or just do nothing for a second. And sometimes it's moving, right? Sometimes you need to move, and that's another form of rest, even though it's active.
Yep. And stretch. Oh my gosh. This has been a conversation that I've been having with several other entrepreneurs, especially those of us that make our living from being in our heads all day, sitting on our butts in front of a computer, or if you're smart, standing in front of a computer because you've got a smart standing desk and you're like actually getting up off your butt. But I sit on my butt
standing though. Can't write.
Me either. Like I get deep into it, ADHD hyper focus, and look up and 3 hours have passed and I've been sitting on my butt. Stretch, guys, stretch. It not only feels really, really great, it's actually keeping you healthy so that you can continue to do your best work. This is, you noticing a theme here?
Yeah. Make sure you tune your body so that you can continue to work.
Yes. Yes.
Or enjoy life outside of work too.
And, and here's another thing too, because both of us talked about taking a sabbatical and structuring your business to support the life that you want to live. How likely do you think you're going to be able to wrap your brain around what that looks like and how to bring it into reality if you are burning the candle at both ends? You're not. So rest. It's important. Start now. Don't wait until. You don't have to earn the right.
Yeah. And sometimes, I mean, I love this concept of having different chapters in your business and different chapters in your life as well. Sometimes you can push. Sometimes it's a hustle chapter of time, but the whole point of chapters is eventually it ends and you go to a new chapter, right? And so it can't be infinite that you are pushing, but it's okay to have sprints. in your life.
Yes.
There's a great book. It's called The Clarity Field Guide.
Oh, I love that one.
Yeah, it's great. It talks about the different like planting seasons in farming and translate that to life and business, where sometimes it's planning, sometimes it's executing, sometimes it's the doldrums where you've done all the work and now you're waiting for things to grow. Sometimes it's cocooning, where you're like resting and withdrawing into yourself to find the energy for the next planning and executing season. And I love this idea of this Clarity Field Guide, because it helps you identify what season you're in right now, and then gives you prompts, questions for you to journal or think through or chat through about solving problems when you're in that specific season. And so I find it really helpful when you don't know what season you're in, or if you're in a season and it's not natural for you. Like doldrums and cocooning are not natural for me. I have spent most of my life bouncing between planning and executing season. And so I don't know how to think about things when I'm trying to give myself permission to do less. And so it's helpful for me to have assistance thinking through solving problems in that space.
Absolutely. And there's an interesting concept about doing less that I think we kind of get confused in this modern age. I learned this from my friend, Dr. Julie, but, and this is a different version of above the line and below the line. But in this, it's referring to mental health, and it's kind of overlapping. And when you're below the line in your personal kind of mental health, you're usually either in one of two lanes: escapism, where you're just avoiding thinking about things, or survivalism, where you're just doing the bare minimum to get by because like everything else feels a little bit overwhelming. And so when I talk about rest and recharging, I'm not necessarily talking about laying on your butt in your sweatpants watching Netflix for the next 3 weeks. There's a time for that, but it can't go on forever. Like your butt's probably going to start hurting after a while. Got to move around so you don't get sores. Probably want to have some sunlight, some vitamin D to keep everything functioning in your body all right. So like,
be careful. What you're not doing when you're watching Netflix is sleeping. And so that's supposed to be rest, right? You're supposed to go to sleep.
Yeah. And I mean, to speak about balance, you need to be able to create as well as consume. And when we get lost in the consuming and we have too many ideas floating at us, I think in a lot of ways that really contributes to the anxiety that we tend to feel and the overwhelm, because we've got such a magnitude of information coming at us every day that if we're not taking time to just shut all of that out, like, again, noticing a theme here to this episode, guys, and work on things that we're passionate about or things that we enjoy, then yeah, of course I understand that you're anxious. You've got too much going on inside your head and no way to quiet that.
Yep.
I could continue talking about this forever, but I want to respect your time. And also I want you to tell everybody about where to find you so that they can hopefully work with you on their businesses.
Yeah, sure. So rachelmazza.com. My last name's Mazza. That's the best place to find me. And I write about this stuff a lot. I write about what I'm learning, the mistakes I've made, the lessons I've learned. And I try to put something out every week. So rachelmazza.com is the best spot.
Yes. Bringing it full circle with the very first guest from Permission to Kick Ass. This was definitely not the planes, trains, and automobiles episode. The number one was
smooth as butter.
Smooth as butter. Everybody go check out Rachel at rachelmazza.com. She is a genius at helping you basically buy back your time and earn a hell of a lot more money while doing it. So thank you so much for being on the show. It was a joy.
Thanks, Angie. It was a blast.
That's all for now. If you want to keep that kick-ass energy high, please take a minute to share this episode with someone that might need a high-octane dose of "you can do it." Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the Permission to Kick Ass podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you stream your podcasts. I'm your host, Angie Coley, and I'm here rooting for you. Thanks for listening, and let's go kick some ass.